In this daily drop, I'm going to talk about what camera you should buy now, or even if you should buy a camera. So let's go. All right, kids, here we are, and the week is flying by. Work is happening. Not as much as I'd like to, but it's happening. And just coming off of Cinegear 2024 and two major camera announcements, the Panasonic GH7 and the Canon Cinema EOS C400, I thought it was a good time to do an episode on what camera should you buy. Now, I am going to preface this episode and say something I have said many times before, and I will probably say for the rest of my life. There is no perfect camera system. Now, there may be a perfect camera for a particular job that you're doing, but there is no one perfect camera system that is going to suit every single type of production, and it can be a very personal thing. Most people who are watching this video probably own at least one, if not multiple cameras, and they have done so many times over their life as a professional doing what we do. So, when brand new cameras get announced, the gear lust sets in and we say, ooh, that's a feature that I want. I have been waiting for this camera for a very long time. Sounds a little creepy, but you know what I mean. You get into it and you start watching all the videos and you start watching all of the content and you say, that camera is going to solve all of my problems, or one huge problem that I have when it comes to production. And I think that from a practical standpoint, unless you are flush with cash and buying cameras is just a hobby and it's fun to just play around with them and, you know, just get to try all of the new features, that it becomes a very, very serious decision in terms of what you should and shouldn't buy. Now, we have the Panasonic GH7, culmination of really many years of development, which really, in my mind, kind of from a practical standpoint, took the industry by storm with the GH4. And that camera, micro four thirds, really had a lot of stuff in it from a video standpoint, albeit a smaller sensor than APS-C / Super 35 or full frame. This GH7 has lots and lots of stuff inside of the camera, including 32-bit float, something I've been talking about and have been wanting to see in cameras for quite some time. We've also talked about it on the Camera and Flask live stream with myself, Caleb Pike, and Ben Barden. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it on this month's Camera and Flask as well. There's some other stuff in there as well on that GH7, which is really interesting. This licensing agreement with RE in terms of the look. Of course, this micro four thirds sensor is not an Alexa 35. It doesn't have the same dynamic range, the latitude. It doesn't have the capabilities of an Alexa 35 sensor. But the fact that they're putting some of that, we'll call it color science, into the GH7, and that you're going to be able to get something that is very close to that look in terms of that, is really interesting stuff. Now, micro four thirds, for me, it ain't my bag, but it can be for a lot of people. And what you have to look at is the cost of the camera, the feature sets, or feature set of that camera, which is a lot in the GH7. And if the micro four thirds sensor size is a plus or a minus to the type of work you do. I personally find myself in relatively small spaces a lot of the time, and being able to shoot with a Super 35mm or full frame sensor is oftentimes an advantage for me in terms of selective focus and depth of field and having a lot of flexibility there. That doesn't say that that doesn't mean that the GH7 is not something you should consider. It just means it's not necessarily the right type of camera system for the types of production that I do and what I am looking for in a camera. Now, the Canon Cinema EOS C400 is a little bit different. It's a full-frame 6K sensor. It is the first full-frame 6K sensor in a Cinema EOS camera from Canon that has the native RF mount. And it's kind of this hybrid between a C70, C300 Mark III, and a C500 Mark II. You're getting a lot of things from all three of those cameras and a new triple base ISO system. Again, native RF mount, new formats inside of the camera in terms of capture, and lots and lots and lots of ports in terms of I/O. And whether or not they're mini or not, I don't know if that's really part of this discussion. It is pretty easy to source mini XLR to full XLR cables, and I think you can work around those things in a box style camera, but it's still not necessarily going to be the right camera for everybody out there. Lots of people have been waiting for it. I have a client and colleague who just ordered 2 of them and will also be ordering most likely the relatively new 24-105 f2.8 lens, the new 35 millimeter hybrid lens, which is pretty interesting. And it's going to be, as a C300 Mark II owner, for that person in that company, the right camera system for what they want to be doing in the future. If you're an FX6 owner, an FX9 owner, maybe you own C70s, you have a C500 Mark II, a red Komodo, you really have to look at that C400 and say, is this camera giving me something that I'm not getting in a huge way from the other cameras that I'm using right now? And the answer may be no, or the answer may be yes. And that's something you're going to have to decide on for yourself. My advice is, because whether or not $8,000 for a camera is a lot of money to you, it's still an investment, is look at that purchase or purchases. Is that even a word? Multiple cameras, and think about what you've invested in your current camera system or systems. And if you were moving into another Cinema EOS camera, can you use certain things that you've invested into for this new camera system? If you're coming from an entirely different system, let's say Sony or Red, are you going to be rebuying new things? What is the total cost, the investment into going into that new camera or cameras? And are they going to make money for you in the relatively short term? And I think that's an important one. You have to make money with the cameras that you're purchasing. They have to be working cameras. And if you're just buying them based on lust or one great new feature, it probably doesn't make sense. My advice to you: wait for the camera to drop, rent it for a long weekend, figure out what the pluses are, the pain points, all of that stuff, make good decisions. So which camera should you buy? Well, you're going to have to decide that for yourself. I think there are more than enough great options out there right now. You have to decide what makes sense for you and your workflow and the types of projects you do. I'd love to hear your comments, so post them, and don't forget to. And I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.